Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. In today's show, I'm going to be talking about the solar eclipse coming up in Leo, arguably the astrological event of the month for August. That eclipse is near the South Node, and so I want to talk a little bit about the energy and themes of this eclipse, as well as give you a few tips on how you can work with this energy over the next week or two. I also have a special eclipse gift. I have a discount code that I want to share with you, which will allow you to save 18% off any classes or webinars on my website over at kellysastrology.com. That is a special gift to you as a podcast listener. So before we get into those pieces, I want to let you know that I do have 2 teachings coming up this month in August. First up, my training course on how to combine progressions and transits. That starts on August 10th, and we have live Q&As August 19 and September 2nd. If you're interested, you can find out more details and sign up over at kellysastrology.com. If you are someone who is already an intermediate student of astrology and really wants to get better at predictive astrology, at forecasting work, especially if you're going to be working with clients, I hope you can join us for my course on how to combine transits and progressions. A little later in the month, I'm teaching my next live webinar. Now, this one is suitable for students of astrology of all levels, and this webinar is about Venus retrograde. So I'll be teaching on August 22nd about the Venus retrograde, which is happening later in the year. Of course, Venus is going to be retrograde in Scorpio and in Libra. So I want to teach you some of the core themes of Venus retrograde. I want to introduce you to the special star pattern that is connected to Venus, and to get into those twin themes of what Venus retrograde in Scorpio is going to be about and what Venus retrograde in Libra is about, because it's kind of half-half. I'm going to share some tips on how you can work with Venus retrograde as a reflective and a creative process, as well as some insights about potent timing tied to this Venus retrograde. So if either of those teachings are of interest to you, all the details are over on the website. And you can use the special eclipse discount if you like to save on either of these courses. So that eclipse coupon code is POD18. So that's POD18. And just enter that code of POD18 when you check out, whether it's for these courses or anything else in the back catalog. I have teachings where we go deeply into working with the nodes or the eclipses, so they may be especially relevant. So that code is POD18, and you can save 18% just until August 19. So pop over to kellysastrology.com to take advantage of that. All right, team, eclipse time. You're all excited? I know many of you probably have strong but mixed feelings about the eclipse itself. So let's get into the dates and details and some of the key themes that you need to know about working with this eclipse. So the eclipse, it's a solar or new moon eclipse. It's on August 12th, unless you're in Australia, then it's on the 13th. It is taking place at 20 Leo. Okay. So one of the interesting things straight out of the gate for this eclipse is that the sun is the planet that is eclipsed, because at a solar eclipse, it's the sun's light that gets blocked. But the sun is also the ruler of the eclipse. You know how when we look at our new and full moon charts, we always factor in the planet that rules the lunation and what it's got going on as an extra influence to do with that new or full moon. So in the case of this solar eclipse in Leo, the sun is both the eclipsed planet, the planet whose light is blocked or dimmed, and it's the ruler of the eclipse. So this part of what makes this eclipse so strong, other than, of course, it is a total solar eclipse, but other than that, it's that we have this one-note signature. It's a solar eclipse. It's ruled by the sun because it's in the sun's sign. So we're just getting one theme. It's a very strong, intense, repeated theme. It's like the cosmos is doubling down on this idea of shadow overcoming light and this idea of invitation into the darkness or into the mystery. And so this eclipse really does bring this very potent omen for this idea of loss of light. Or if we think about who or what the sun represents, the sun represents leaders, royalty, people in positions of power, people that are held in like elevated esteem, or that are figureheads or have symbolic influence or actual influence. So the sun represents, we talk about a solar figure. It could be, it's not necessarily a masculine or a male figure. It's any person who stands in the spotlight, who has a high profile, who is impacting or influencing a lot of people. And so that could be a politician, it could be the leader of a large organization, it can be royalty, it can be people who are considered thought leaders or creative visionaries. So anybody that's in kind of that elevated position. And so when we see this solar eclipse, this blocking of the light, we do get this omen that even back in ancient times was considered to be the downfall of a leader, the loss or the death or the stepping away from the throne type of process symbolically. So that's part of the collective influence. It's not necessarily what everybody is going to experience in their personal lives, because the nature of a solar figure is that there are few of them rather than many. So that is how we might see this play out in the collective or the public space. At a personal level, I think this eclipse brings an invitation to step into the darkness, to the mystery, into the realm of the unseen, where we don't rely on our sight or our intellectual understanding, but rather we are exploring with our subtle senses, with our felt sense, with our embodied, somatic, intuitive self instead. And so this eclipse is sort of saying, with the blocking of the light, the actual literal blocking of the light, how can you get away from the most visible or obvious parts of who you are? How can you step away from what it appears that everything is or is about? And how can you kind of go beneath the surface? That's part of what this eclipse is asking. So we're looking to sort of get into what is maybe in the unconscious realm or what is hidden that we can now access. So as the solar light of wisdom and the intellect dims, this eclipse really offers a call towards the unknown. So themes of this eclipse really include this idea of stepping off stage and intentionally embracing time in the darkness, like moving away from what's most obvious or what typically occupies your time. And this eclipse might describe a period in your life where you're actually happy not to be seen, where you want to embrace a lower profile, or when you're sharing a little bit of your genuine, authentic light, you only want to do that with fewer people or in smaller, more intimate settings. And so typically eclipses have been used for forecasting the fates of leaders, nations, and dynasties. So a lot of our ancient literature is on how to use eclipses for timing at that collective macro level. But it doesn't mean you can't work with the eclipses at a personal level. And one of the ways you're going to want to be very tuned into to do so is to really get connected to the topics of the Leo part of your chart and life. And so this idea of the light being turned off or the light being blocked and what's obvious being like you're stepping away from what's obvious for a while, that is going to really show up around the Leo house, the Leo part of your chart and life. So there's definitely something here about pattern breaking, about stepping away from what's familiar, and about interrupting or disrupting the habits and regular rhythms and routines in general, because that's what eclipses are about, but really specifically at a personal level about the Leo part of your chart and life. That's the part of your chart and the areas in your life, the people or the topics or the settings that are being most directly influenced by this eclipse in Leo, of course. And it's in those areas of your Leo house, that's where you're going to experience some of the agitation, the uncertainty, and that pressure to really make changes to long-standing patterns and rituals. Keep in mind that the Leo part of our chart and life is ruled by a fixed sign. So it is an area of our life where we get into a groove and we want to repeat the process. We want to just kind of have a sense of continuity. It is the part of our chart and life ruled by the sun, the most steady, consistent planet we have. And so this is an area of our life that normally is very steady. It's very consistent. It kind of pulses to that steady consistency. And so now we have the disruptive influence of an eclipse. We have the longer 18-month trend of the South Node in Leo. I've done a whole webinar separately on that. So grab that if you don't have it. You can use your coupon code and save 18%, no problems. So this idea that the Leo part of our chart and life, it is being agitated on a long-term kind of vibe to do with the South Node, but it's been particularly kind of disrupted or upended under this eclipse happening, in mid-August. So that's important to keep in mind. It's also important, I've been referencing this a few times already, but I want to kind of say it explicitly, that we have to, I always like to remind myself that an eclipse is a special kind of new or full moon. And it's a kind of new or full moon that is aligned with the nodal axis. And that actually means that the sun, moon, and the earth all line up in the same plane. And this is how we get the blocking of the light. At a solar eclipse, we have the moon's light blocking the sun. At a lunar eclipse, we have the earth lights, the earth kind of interfering with the light getting to the moon. And so we have this idea of, with an eclipse, we have this sense of a regular rhythm or pattern is temporarily disrupted or interrupted. And that idea of an eclipse representing a break in the regular pattern or the regular schedule, that's really important to help understand why, when we're in eclipse season, life is a bit wonky and janky. Our regular routines go out the window, our regular habits, we're kind of off our regular rhythm, like we're just not doing what we normally do. So eclipses, interruptions, and disruptions, they go hand in hand. And so it's good to understand that when we're in this eclipse time, which is not just the day of the eclipse, it exists for a few weeks before and after the eclipse. We have something called eclipse season, which actually lasts for about 6 weeks. But of course, the eclipses themselves are those real peak points in eclipse season. And so this eclipse, like all eclipses, is telling you, it's a sign, a cosmic sign, that says this is not business as usual. All areas of your life, but especially those connected to the topics of your Leo house, they are not operating according to your regular rhythms and patterns. So if you normally do a workout class or see a friend or do a thing with your child or have this thing that typically happens in the second week of the month at work, everything is out of order at the moment. Now, the other piece that we really have to get into, I mentioned this at the top of the show, is what about the node and the South Node and how does that play into it? So we always consider what is the node, the North Node or the South Node, that the moon is closest to at the time of the eclipse. And that's the nodal influence that really becomes baked into the energy of the eclipse. And so this eclipse is a South Node eclipse. The eclipse is happening at 20 Leo, which is where the sun and moon come together. The node itself, the South Node, is at 29 Leo. And that is definitely close enough for us to have this total solar eclipse vibe. And so what we have here is the South Node energy is what really infuses the eclipse. It's one of the things. The South Node is a point of releasing and clearing. It represents the lower half of the cosmic dragon, and it is about emptying out like garbage, essentially. So this eclipse is a clue that there is clutter and blockages that need to be removed. It's like we need to flush the toilet, we need to clean the pipes, we need to take the garbage out, we need to do a run to the tip or the dump. We need to get rid of congestion and clutter on all levels. So some of this clearing clutter is going to happen at a physical level. So there's actual junk or clutter or mess in your environment, excess stuff, and that needs to be cleared or tidied up or dealt with. Some of these blockages are going to be energetic or emotional. They're going to be in that kind of psychic, intangible realm where you are stuck kind of unconsciously repeating a pattern that is no longer working for you. And you may already know that you need to find a new way forward, but we often experience that frustration of being stuck, of like, I know this isn't working for me. I'm not getting the outcomes I want, but I don't know what to do next. Now, this eclipse is not bringing you those solutions about what to do next, sorry to say, but it is giving you a real nudge or maybe a big push to cleanse, to kind of just be like, okay, if I know this thing doesn't work, I'm just going to like literally try anything else, or I'm just going to refrain from doing that thing. And maybe there's some space that opens up. Maybe there's some energy that opens up. Maybe there's some cash that opens up. Maybe there's some peace that arises. The key with this eclipse, like eclipses are typically times to embrace not doing. And South Node eclipses, other than doing clearing and releasing like work, there's not much else that we want to be doing right now. We don't want to be building things. We don't want to be intention setting. We don't want to be doing magical rituals for accumulation, because this eclipse is about dissipation. It's about dispersing things. It is about like putting things out into the ether. If you're a creative or an artistic person, you might find this is a very prolific period for you, where the energy of the South Node kind of drain is pulling your creative work out into the world. Now, you may not be getting great reward for it, but that's okay. The South Node actually doesn't care about rewards or accolades or success or achievement. The South Node is actually guiding us all towards more authentic, more spiritual, and more altruistic outcomes. The South Node is not ambitious or accumulative. It's more about what is the right path to walk because it's the right path to be on. What is, sort of that Buddhist idea of non-attachment or right action. And so this eclipse, especially in the sign of Leo, which can be an area of our chart and lives where we want to go for the 5-star kind of experience. We want to have that impressive output or the accolades. And the South Node is saying, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that right now. That's not meaningful in the way that I thought it was. And so this eclipse is asking for those clearings of the blockages and the decluttering. But there's something about the shifting inner light that is coming through with this eclipse as well. So just before we move on to talking about that a little bit more, so at the practical level, working with this eclipse is going to involve some tidying up of your space. And that might mean making decisions about what to repair, recycle, donate, or throw out. It definitely means your home and workspace needs to become more open and clear with less mess and distraction and accumulation. And if you think about the Leo part of your chart and life, if Leo is on your 4th house of home and family, it's very specific about where you live and something in your home that needs to be, cleansed or emptied out. If Leo is 2nd house of money, cash flow, income, and spending, it's very much thinking about what am I wasting money on that isn't giving me that reward that I would like to have. So to be about changing and clearing money habits that aren't working so well for you. Of course, you can also work with this eclipse, as we said, energetically or emotionally. And that might mean having time for reflection, for meditation, for healing, for any kind of cleansing ritual to kind of make sure your energy is balanced and you're not being affected by the mood or currents of others. Now, the energy of any eclipse, but particularly this one, is really intense and kind of destabilizing. And so you want to be very gentle with any cleanse or healing or energetic work that you are exploring. It's very much about subtle rather than like drastic. Because when we do drastic cleanses on an eclipse, it can go too far too quickly, basically. And as you're navigating or working through like the decluttering, the clearing mess, or meditative and healing and releasing processes, you just want to make sure that you don't overburden your body. So your physical vitality is likely to be a little bit reduced. The nature of an eclipse is like anti-vitality. And so extra care and nourishment to support your well-being might be needed. If Leo is 10th house of career for you, you might notice that work is really draining you more than usual, and you want to have better guardrails or buffers against that, for instance. Now, the great thing about this eclipse is that if you've been wanting to disrupt a bad habit or tendency, or you're doing something almost unconsciously that you know isn't serving you, this eclipse is perfect for breaking those patterns and disrupting that unconscious tendency. And so when we come back to this idea of the light of the sun dimming and this idea of calling us back to, what is really maybe meaningful or intentional for us via the South Node, as the obvious kind of normal, regular life fades away, this eclipse might help you really explore what is sitting in the shadows. It might be something that you normally avoid or overlook. It might be that there's old pain or hurt that needs tending to. But it also might be that there's a neglected skill, habit, or talent that you haven't fully expressed, that you haven't fully acknowledged or admitted is in you. And so this eclipse can also help with us kind of doing a bit of an internal recalibration, where we're thinking about not what kind of light do I want to express in a performative way, but rather what kind of light is more genuine that wants to emanate from deep within the belly of my being. And what adjustments do I need to make? Where have I gotten off track where what I'm bringing out is maybe a polished, sort of presentable version, but isn't as so aligned with the real core you? And there's something here in this South Node eclipse that I think is about helping polish or burnish off the congestion and the clutter of the very essence of our beings. There's all kinds of roles or titles and identities that we find ourselves adopting or playing or performing in various parts of our chart and life. And I really keep coming back to this idea and of the symbolism of this solar eclipse in Leo with the South Node, that this is the perfect eclipse to help you shed that old skin or shake off an old identity. There's probably a role, a responsibility, maybe even a position of influence that you're in that you have outgrown. And so this eclipse can really help acknowledge that, and it can help you maybe step away or start to create distance. What this eclipse at its heart is really looking for is to encourage you to make a shift from the kind of doing what will get reward thing of the Sun-Leo combination, and instead moving towards this is what is most genuine and authentic for me, regardless of external response, essentially. And I know it's really common to think, well, if I kind of move away from X, Y, Z, what am I going to be doing next? And I totally understand that. But this eclipse is actually not about figuring the next steps out. This eclipse is identifying that old identity, that old role, that old skin that you want to disconnect from or unhook from so that you can make the space. So just making the space, going through the ending process, that's what this eclipse is really about. Now, the sun, if we keep thinking about our sun energy, we talked a lot about solar figures and people, but maybe at a more personal level, it's good to remember that the sun is about what's central in our life. It's sort of like, what are our central organizing principles or priorities? And so when this sun goes through its eclipse with the South Node, there are some questions coming up about who or what we prioritize. And you might be nudged or pushed towards rethinking who or what is given this central priority in your life. Like, what do you think about, first thing when you wake up or just before you go to bed? What do you spend most of your time doing? That is a clue as to what is prioritized in your life, whether you realize it or not. You might be getting the sense that what you used to worship or uphold may no longer be the right thing to aspire to moving forward. And so I think this eclipse, given that it's the South Node and it's in Leo, I think it can really help with exploring your true essence as well as bringing insight around the most heartwarming and stabilizing topics that are worth prioritizing. And so this idea of getting clear on who or what's been in the center, what have I been orbiting, or who or what have I been orbiting around, and is that still in alignment with who I am today? And if not, what changes are we going to make and when? So as the eclipse kind of creates this sort of shadow, mysterious light, there are these undertones of release with this South Node eclipse in Leo, and that is very much about clearing, which is so important. Doing the release, doing the clearing right now can help you identify and shift any fear that might prevent this true shining or this more authentic shining. Like fear of being seen or fear of being known for who you really are. Obviously, that's a common thing for a lot of people. And this eclipse is kind of saying it's less about what other people think about you being out in the world and more about how it feels for you and how it helps you get in alignment. So this eclipse is great to help you clear energetic and emotional baggage from the past that might be cluttering up your insides and interfering with your ability to be the person that you have the potential to be. And so that means we're going to be like identifying what's in our way, doing some supportive healing work, and hopefully releasing it or coming to a place of forgiveness and acceptance around it. So there are some thoughts on this eclipse, on the different layers and the different ways that we can work with it. Let me know in the comments below. Are you working with this eclipse on a practical level? Are you making some life changes? Are things shifting deep within? What kind of patterns are you breaking under this eclipse? Hopefully this gives you a few different ways to kind of put perspective around what might be stirring deep inside for you under this eclipse, but also how you can move through this period with awareness. If you're interested in saving 18% off an astrology class or webinar, that code again is POD18, and you can use that over at kellysastrology.com. So yeah, let me know what is stirring in you or being released in your life under this eclipse. I'd love to hear in the comments below. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining me for another episode. I'll be back to share more again soon. Until then, take care.